Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Indiana State Police Roadshow. I'm your host, Sergeant John Perrine, the Public Information Officer for the Indiana State Police Indianapolis District. The Roadshow is brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance and Cops for Kids, a subsidiary of the State Police Alliance. For more information about them, visit www.indianasfinest.com. I want to thank Network Indiana and our good friend Sam for getting us on the radio across the state of Indiana each and every week. If you're listening to us on the radio, we certainly appreciate that. I hope if you're in your car, you've got your seatbelt buckled and you're driving at least close to the speed limit. And certainly want to thank our friend Tom Trial for getting us on YouTube. He makes us look a lot better on TV and on YouTube than we actually do in person, especially for my guest, who has had a little bit of an absence from the roadshow because of his incredibly busy schedule, but he's here today.
I'm back.
Yeah, my good friend, Deputy Chief Mike Pruitt from the Bargersville Fire Department. So thanks for coming in, Mike.
And I'd like to say I missed you, but no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, always good to see you. And it's a perfect time to see you because we're coming up start of the summer. Memorial Day weekend kind of kicks it all off. Although we've got great weather leading up to, it seems like the summer activities begin when Memorial Day hits. So
right, everybody's been able to get outside, start getting active, but Memorial Day weekend and after, it's on. That's when we're hitting the water. That's what we're doing all our camping and getting outdoors and doing all kinds of activities. And so, but with that, and we've talked about this many times before, there's problems.
This might shock you, but I'm actually a grill master. I'm pretty good on the grill. I can work my way around and get some things cooked pretty well. But what are some of the most common mistakes that you see people that lead to safety and lead to injuries?
So when we look at grill safety, one of the things is when somebody starts grilling, put your grill in a safe spot, because I don't know how many times we've gone to calls where somebody had the grill right up against their vinyl home.
You can always see the melted siding.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
And they got there and they left it unattended, or maybe they take the food off and they leave it cooking and the grease gets hot and it catches fire. And of course, some of these are propane tanks, and then something happens to the propane tank and now we have a fire going. And these get to be pretty spectacular fires in grills sometimes. So, before you start grilling, check the grill. Make sure it's working appropriately. Make sure that the gas lines are all good on it.
Keep it clean, right?
Keep
because
it clean.
A lot
That's
of grease
huge because I can tell you, I've opened up some grills before, and it probably makes a good burger with all that oil dripping on everything and grease. But honestly, keeping it clean. If you're one of those charcoal people that is the traditional type, make sure you don't dump the charcoal in a plastic trash can when you're done. Stir the coals, put it out, because if you dump it in a plastic trash can with other combustibles, guess what? You're gonna get
even
the fire
when you
department
think it's not burning anymore.
Yes,
right?
It could be hours later.
Yeah,
and we've gone to those before, and people wake up in the middle of the night, the whole back of the house on fire.
Grill, and I've had probably just about all of them, but right now I use a pellet smoker. It's so easy.
Those are nice.
You just set the temperature and you let it go.
It's very bougie.
Yeah, that's me.
To use. Yes,
yeah.
You're absolutely right. But
so grilling kind of kicks it all off, but along with the warm weather comes a lot of fun stuff. But also fire departments start seeing water emergencies, rescues, swimming pools, ponds, lakes, rivers. Usually it revolves around somebody doing something unsafe.
Right. And it could be everything to people, too much alcohol being in the pool, trying to do things into the pool or into the water they shouldn't, like diving into shallow water, things like that. Boater safety issues, we get into those. Children, unattended, at the family pool out back. Make sure that you know what's going on around your back pool. Make sure that the area is secure. I know many times we hear people climb over a fence, but at least make sure your fence is closed. Make sure your gates are closed so that some small child doesn't wander for next door and find themselves in the pool in an emergency. A
lot of it comes down to supervision too. The one thing that we hear every single time that a child wanders off and gets hurt into a pool or something like that, what's the adult say every time?
They didn't know they were gone. They thought They thought that they were in the other room.
Thought somebody else was watching them. Miscommunication. And they just looked away for a second. Whatever it is, it doesn't take long.
It does not take long at all. So they always say your mom always told you, hey, you just ate, don't go get in the pool. And a lot of that's due to cramping. If you just give yourself some time before you jump back in the pool, and especially if you're drinking a lot of alcohol, you really have no business going in there unless you're going to tie about 2 or 3 flotation devices to keep you on the top. But we see a lot with adults. It's always alcohol.
Yeah.
With kids, unattended, and that's where we get ourselves in trouble.
Well, and make sure that we talk about water safety in general, but you go out on the water on a boat, a canoe, a kayak, a paddleboard, maybe you're just out floating. Make sure you have the proper life-saving flotation devices, and not a bad idea just to wear that stuff.
Absolutely. And if our friends from the Department of Natural Resources come by and check things out and you don't have the proper safety equipment, your day could get really expensive. And even worse, if you do have an emergency, then you're going to find yourself in trouble also.
Yeah, time and time again, we hear of these what people call accidents where somebody jumps in and they just don't come back up for whatever reason. A flotation device is essential in a situation like that, because even if you go unconscious, you fall off your skis, you fall off your tube, you hit the water hard enough to go unconscious, at least you're going to float with a flotation device.
Yeah, I've responded to accidents over time and on large and small bodies of water, and if the person had the flotation device on, they were good to go no matter what their medical condition was at that point. But if you don't have one on, bad things happen.
And another summertime activity that we see more and more of all the time, it seems, is like backyard campfires or bonfires. And I think it's pretty recent that almost every backyard has a fire pit now. And it's popular to, in the evening, you sit around the fire pit and you enjoy it. But what are some things people need to be thinking about, not only if you're putting in a fire pit, but as you're using your fire pit that maybe is already established?
Well, the fire pit is an open burn, so we want to make sure it's clean. So the last thing that we need to do is start throwing tires, couches, trash, and believe me, these are because I've just seen these things happen. But if you really truly want to use this as a recreational fire, you need a pit, or if you have a nice fire pit, make sure it's away from anything that's combustible like structures, and make sure that thing is completely out when you go to bed. All it takes is a little wind to pick up at night after you've gone to bed and your fire pit was out there burning. The next thing you know, the fence catches on fire, the mini barn catches on fire, part of your house catches on fire because you left those hot ashes in there. So really it comes down, the complaints we usually get on those pits are people are burning things they shouldn't be burning.
Yeah.
And then after hours, they're catching things on fire.
And think about, you use proper fire starter. One of the worst things that I've seen burnt is cardboard boxes. I mean, if you've ever burnt or seen a cardboard box burn at night, you realize the amount of ash and flames that are flying through the sky when you're burning that. So use the proper combustible stuff and know what kind of wood you're burning too.
Exactly. Cured wood is what we want to burn in those fire pits. And another thing in talking about the cardboard is how many times we see people take lighter fluid or gasoline.
It's cool.
It looks really cool, and you don't look so cool running across your backyard, a giant flaming ball going across the backyard. Yeah. But I personally know people that have been injured because they tried to start a fire like that with gasoline to get it going. And there's other tools out there to use that you don't have to use something
While
like
we're
that.
on the topic of fire, Mike, talk some real basic first aid. If somebody gets a serious burn, they've burnt themselves to the point where they need medical attention, what are some of the things that need to be done in those first few minutes to ensure that they're going to stay safe?
Cold water. Call 911, because the quicker we can get you to a burn center, especially if you have a substantial burn, the better off you're going to be. But cold water, making sure that we run that because we want to cool that burn. There are a lot of old home remedies out there that they talk about to put on these burns, and honestly, just leave it to EMS to treat the burn before they go to the hospital.
Should you put anything on it or leave it open?
I would not put anything on it, because one of the things you got to remember is when you put something on that skin that's burnt, it's going to attach to that, and that's even going to be even more painful and potentially do more damage to the skin when they try to take it off. So
leave it open.
If you're going to put anything on there dry, just leave it dry. A lot of people have the tendency to want to put a cold rag and stuff like that, or cold gauze and things like that, or bandages. Just leave it clean. Just run water on it and keep it cool. But it's very important that you get to the hospital as quick as possible.
Yeah, and speaking of medical things, and Indy 500 is a perfect example of people just getting too hot and not recognizing the signs that they're too hot. A lot of times that comes with the consumption of alcohol and not enough water, whatever the reason is. What are some of the signs that you need to look for in yourself or the person you're with to say something's wrong?
If you see somebody and they're not acting appropriately, maybe their skin's really dry, or maybe they're even profusely sweating. There's heat stroke, Okay, that's the worst case scenario. That's where that body gets really dry, and now our body is starting to shut down, and the internal temperatures in the body are rising. And so when we start seeing heat stroke, that's a really big medical emergency. Okay, if someone's just dehydrated and they got some cramps going on, that may be they just need to hydrate. And so it's very important if we're going to plan ahead to go to an event like a race or any outdoor activities. Hydrate, drink lots of water, a lot of times Gatorade. Just get those electrolytes in your system. Keep hydrating throughout the day. It's not just something you start in the mornings and then you stop. You got to keep that up throughout the day. And that way you tend to stay out of trouble. Make sure you put your sunscreen on, not SPF 5, but like go up 50, 60, 70, some of these higher numbers, put that all over you and protect you from the sun. If you do that in hydration, then you're probably going to come away at the end of the day feeling a lot better and not having any type of medical emergency.
Yeah, so, a lot of fun things come with the summer. We always enjoy it, but you always have to be thinking safety too. Nothing will ruin a fun time like a trip to an emergency room.
Absolutely. And emergency rooms these days, the wait can be long.
Yeah, and they're not cheap.
And they're not cheap. And so it's just best to stay away.
Yeah, certainly. What else do you have for us, Mike? It's summertime. We've got a few minutes left here. You always come so prepared that he walked in. He said, "Yeah, what are we going to talk about?"
Yeah, what are we talking about?
You can always just count on Mike to talk about something.
Summer travel. So a lot of people get out, start riding their bicycles, and we see bicycle injuries every year. Somebody doesn't wear a helmet, and either they crash on the bicycle or they get hit by a car. So if you're going to go out and ride bicycles with family, look both ways. Wear your helmets. I know that you and I probably grew up in a time where you said something to wear a helmet back in the day, they'd look at us like, really? You're going to wear a helmet?
I have a story with that. As my neighbor friend he got a go-kart, and my parents said, hey, if you want to ride it, you have to have a helmet. Well, we didn't have a helmet, so we get on the go-kart, and I've got my baseball helmet on, and he's got his football helmet on, and away we went with probably not the proper helmet, but it was something.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, that would have been pretty funny to see.
Back then. But no, the tech, they're available. The bicycle helmets if you're going to be riding on go-karts or mini bikes or whatever. Take the time, take the money to go out and get the proper things.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if we're going to events, designated drivers, you and I talk about this all the time, making sure we got somebody that's designated to get us from point A to point B. If you live in an area that's Uber friendly, why use those Ubers, because it's a lot cheaper to use an Uber than to cause a crash and injure yourself, injure somebody else, or take somebody else's life. And that $15 Uber charge versus thousands of dollars doesn't even compare.
You talk about a life-changing decision. The decision to drive drunk is not a decision that only affects the person making the decision, because if that decision leads to a crash, the effect that has on a community, on a family, is infinite. And so that simple decision to think that you're okay to drive could cost somebody everything.
Yeah. One more topic, weather. Pay attention to the weather. Know the forecast long before you go anywhere to any events. If you hear that thunder, you probably need to, if you're in the water, you hear thunder, it's time to go. It's time to get out of the water, even though it seems like it might be a long ways away.
Yeah. With my boys racing, we all use pop-up tents. And I'll tell you, I've been places where storms have blown in so fast that these tents just go everywhere. And it's dangerous because they fly through the air. So monitor that and be ready for it.
Secure them.
Yeah.
I've seen a few of those end up in the power lines before, and that's not a pretty sight, especially when people go up and start grabbing the tent, trying to pull it out of the...
That's a terrible idea.
Yeah, it's called job security for me in many ways, but unfortunately I hate it when that happens.
Yeah, so we want people to be thinking safety. It's summertime. Go out, have a great time. And the two things you always hear Mike and I warn you about is if you hear somebody say, hey, y'all, watch this, something dangerous and bad is about to happen, be ready to call 911. And don't mix alcohol with things like lighting fireworks, driving a boat, anything that requires any type of coherentness is not a good idea to do that while you're consuming alcohol.
Right. Nope. I'm excited about this summer.
You're going to be showing pigs and 4-H.
Showing livestock.
His son's been out of 4-H for probably 10 years now, and he's still very heavily involved.
I'm still recruiting kids to like, oh, you're done? Okay, I'm going to
Uncle Mike's going to buy me a pig this year.
Yeah, now my wife isn't too happy about the money we spend, but it's all for the kids.
But it's a good time, right? They learn a lot of valuable lessons.
It's for the kids. I learn lessons, they learn lessons.
Now, when you say it's for the kids, are you including yourself in that?
Yes. I'm a 57-year-old child. Just ask my wife.
Of course you are. Well, thank you to Michael Pruitt for coming in and speaking with us today. We hope everybody has a safe summer. Wear your seatbelt, drive sober, and be careful. We'll see you later.